I'm gonna pull the whole thing down. I'm gonna bring the whole fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gonna be biblical.
Am I doing it?
Oh, good. We didn't even ask, did we? Yeah, you do it then.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to Patriots Across the Pond, Midweek Metals with Matt Geiger, episode 9. How are you guys today?
Doing good. Good to see you both.
And you, mate. Missed you last week. You're flat
I know.
out. You were flat out. I suppose you're working Scott like a dog as well, are you?
Yeah. We were at the ThreadFest last week, and it was a great event. Got a chance to meet a lot of sponsors that I work with that I hadn't met yet. Dave from News Treason, Rambo. A lot of clients, people that I've done business with over the years. Got to meet them in person, so that was great. I think everybody had an amazing time. Jan Halper Hayes was there.
Yeah.
She's terrific. I got to talk with her and spend a little time with her and her little doggy. And just a great, great experience. Dallas, we went down to Dealey Plaza, where Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah.
So I spent the day down there, had some lunch over there. It was cool. It's cool. Dallas is a cool place, cool city.
I like Dallas.
Yeah.
It's great. I watched that ThreadFest episode. That's the one live they put out with Jan Alper on stage. John Scott were up there, Dave and Rambo, and all having a chat. That was a fucking brilliant hour and a half. That was because
it was great.
Loads of bits out of that and put them everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah, Jan's excellent, isn't she?
She's amazing. She's an amazing woman and just a wealth of knowledge. And it's like when she speaks, you listen.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, well, it looks like you got good weather there. It was raining when I got up this morning. Then we had a heat wave of sunshine. Then it was snowing. Then it was sunshine again. And now it's absolutely chucking it down.
Wow. All right.
I think we're officially in spring now here in New York.
Yeah.
Temperature's still going up and down a little, but you know how I know we're in spring? When my gardener shows up for the spring cleaning. So that was yesterday.
Good.
Right in podcast time. So, what's going on with the metals market and everything you're doing at the moment?
Well, you had a little bit of a dip in gold silver price. It's just market manipulation. I don't think anybody should be concerned. So if you're somebody that bought silver, 121 an ounce, I wouldn't panic. This is just, they're going to push down the price because these banks need to get out of these toxic short positions. So it's going to look like a sell-off, but it's all paper ounces. It's just, that's the surface value of it. And I think once it stabilizes here, we'll probably see, especially silver, start, potentially hitting that 150, 200 range, maybe the next couple weeks, couple months, but I think it's poised to do that.
Certainly a great time for people to buy, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm trying to get everybody, especially IRAs, that I have been processing. I'm really trying to get those expedited through because I'd like to see people catch this dip, but that stuff takes time. So, if you're thinking about doing an IRA, in precious metals, gold or silver, just realize you probably have probably is going to take about, 10 to 14 business days, which is really about 2 to 3 weeks start to finish. So, just keeping in mind, it's like if you want to catch a price, you might have to wait a couple weeks before you can even have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I have a question for you as like someone who doesn't really understand the ins and outs of IRAs and 401ks and all those sort of things. So say someone has some money, and what's the best, like you just have money in your bank and you want to, figure out how to invest it in a way that's going to grow, right? So clearly we're talking about precious metals.
Sure.
So how does somebody just buy silver and or gold, or do they have to start an IRA? Like, I don't even know how you get, I don't even know how I got my IRA.
Yeah, totally understand. Yeah, let's clarify. So there's really two ways we do it, right? We do it through IRAs, 401ks, where you take an existing IRA and you stick it into the precious metals, right? We don't start new IRAs because the reason for that is your maximum contribution, I think, is something like $7,500 a year. It's too small for us to work with.
Got it.
Right. Generally, our minimum, I like to make our minimum 50,000 in IRAs. Why? Because I don't charge huge fees. And based on the back office work and the people I have to pay to do that, my commission basically breaks even at about 50,000. Now, will I do it for somebody at 30,000 or 25? Probably I would, just as a courtesy. But generally speaking,
talking about an existing IRA,
right?
Okay,
existing IRA accounts.
Got it.
So you just take those and you're just converting that to the physical precious metals, right? And then you have the other, which is like you pointed out, you have cash in a bank account, right? Right now we have a lady who, she's local here. She just sold one of her houses. She's got a lot of real estate. She's done pretty well for herself in real estate. She's poised to do, probably close to $1 million cash purchase. She's just going to come down to my office, or let's say she lived across the country. We would just ship that fully insured directly to whatever place you want at your house. If you want it sent to a depository, if you don't feel comfortable storing yourself, we can do that too.
Actual silver / gold.
Actual silver, yes, the actual physical product. Both IRAs and cash purchase, it's all the same thing, right? This is the physical stuff. Generally, I like to recommend United States coin. To me, that's the right way to buy this stuff. Some people feel differently. Some people just want, a basic silver round. It's a little bit cheaper. You get a little bit more bang for your buck, no doubt about it. But yeah, if you just do a cash purchase, that would be stuff we just ship right to your doorstep.
Okay. So people can't go to you and say, hey, Matt, I want to have an IRA. That's like not, they have to have an existing IRA.
Existing, yeah.
Convert. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just my question.
Exactly. Like if somebody wants help just setting up an IRA, just as in general, we can help you facilitate it. I'm not a financial advisor. I lean on financial companies to handle that aspect of it for me. But yeah, if somebody's just out there and they just want to start an IRA, I'd help them out. I'd point them in the right direction.
Do you have to start an IRA in a banking situation, or can you start an IRA for day one in gold and silver?
You probably could. I mean, the problem is like I said, it's just the minimums. It's that to do all the work to get the gold and silver in there, plus you're paying storage fees. It doesn't make sense at $7,500 maximum contribution.
I gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm just asking these questions because they're kind of like stupid questions, so that we sort
of not stupid at all.
Clarify.
This is what the average person is thinking, and I think it's great that you ask those types of questions because that's probably what's going through some people in the audience's mind. Some people are not very familiar with this stuff, and sometimes that makes it so that they don't do anything because they don't hear the answers to stuff like this. So yeah, no, great questions.
Okay. So what's a typical day in the life of someone like you and Scott who are gold and silver dealers? Like, what does your typical day look like?
I mean, we're up pretty early, because we got to get up for East Coast. Lately we've been working out of my house and not my office. I go in my office maybe a few times a week. I'm usually kind of more by appointment there. I have my staff in my office. They do all the back office work. We're over on 75th and Bell. I live about two exits down. I'm here at my house right now. Yeah, the two of us, we sit down at our desk and, I have a big table, we sit across from each other and we, man the phones. We get phone calls pretty much all day and talk to everybody. And, it's usually less about gold and silver and more about, oh, what are you seeing? What's going on? And, what do you think is going to happen here? What do you think is going to happen there? So it's a lot of fun because we get to deal with really what I call the world's best people, which are the Patriot community.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we don't really do. I mean, I do business with liberals. I wouldn't turn them away. I'd happily help them. You know, I'm not that kind of guy. But no, we pretty much deal with 100% patriots, and you know, we just guide them, give them explanations, whether it be on IRA 401k stuff or just general product choices, and you know, sometimes the conversations can be a little bit repetitive about the gold and silver stuff, but it's fun. You know, the audience makes it fun. The customer demographic couldn't be better. You know, we usually wrap up at 5 o'clock or so. You know, sometimes I head into my office for meetings there if I have to buy. You know, sometimes people want to come in and sell gold or silver, so I got to go. And you know, if it's under 10,000, the nice part about Arizona is if anything under 10,000, I can pay you cash and not have to report any of it to the government. That's in our state constitution.
I think that's New York as well.
I'm not sure what the laws are in New York, but we have very favorable gold and silver laws out here that are, you know, as corrupt as our government is in Arizona, and I think it's getting cleaned up. You know, we saw the ballots being taken out down in downtown Phoenix. You know, the 300,000 Biden ballots, the phony ones, they just showed up and confiscated those, so that's great. But overall, I mean, Arizona is a great state to be in. You know, it's just this time of year it starts to get a little bit. I mean, we've had heat. The heat started sinking in here the other day, and I was like, it's not supposed to be here yet. It's supposed to be like May. You know, so we're here in like mid-March and we're getting like 106. So I'm like, darn it, man. Because yeah, the summers here are just a little bit much for us.
I bet you throw a bit of tinfoil that conversation into your gold chat as well. If you got Patriots calling you all day long.
Oh, totally. We, we talk about the most crazy of subjects, and it's great because it makes the job fun. And, you know, I don't take myself too seriously. I take the job seriously, and I take the bottom line for people and making sure their stuff's done very seriously. But, you know, I think as somebody in the Patriot community, you know, I think this whole movement sort of humbled all of us.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of taken us down a notch or two in terms of, you know, letting our, you know, I think what's great about us is we're less egotistical. You know, we're not these egotistical know-it-alls, everything. I think we're more curious, you know, and I think that's the way people should be, is live with curiosity rather than ego and thinking you know everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
it must be a pleasure working with all these people all day long as well.
I want to just add about New York, because, you know, I was a know nothing about silver and gold person like 5-6 years ago, but I just knew enough that I should probably buy some. So I just went to my local storefront right here in Garden City. And so, yeah. And he was saying, like, if it's under 10, you know, if it's $9,999, like, there's no reporting. In fact, they even have a sign up there. So it would be interesting, and people, you know, check your state wherever you are. But if New York has that, and we're so cabal, there's probably a chance that there's a lot more states that also have that, which is a nice amount of money to go up to, where you're not dealing with all that red tape stuff.
Absolutely. It definitely helps. And, you know, yeah, I love taking an inventory. I mean, I just bought some inventory recently at like 85 spot price.
Wow.
So, I mean, I'm not even worried about it. I just take it in, I let it sit around, and, you know, I know this stuff's going to be taken off. So, I mean, I'll buy at any price. You know, I really don't care, because I always have a market for it. I see gold and silver prices absolutely going apoplectic here this year. And, you know, I think it's a great place to be. There's going to be a lot of problems in the banks. You know, I don't know if I talked about it on this show with you guys. I know I've been on the other shows talking about it, but, you know, our good friend Juan, you know, he's been talking about these school bonds. These school bonds, and the way the school bonds work is, you know, let's say I have a high school that you want to build, and the thing costs $50 million. Well, they'll go take out a bond for $100 million. So right there, they pocket $50 million without really anybody noticing. They don't see it because it's in bonds, right? No one, the general public doesn't see this stuff. And then over the course of the next 10, 15, 20 years, they'll go and refinance these things. And next thing you know, they're up to $500 million. So what was supposed to cost $50 million to build the school, really now is they've taken out an additional $450 million and they pocket it themselves. And now, you know, and they get these very favorable terms where they don't have to make any interest payments. They don't have to make any payments at all over the course of, you know, a decade or two. And now all these practices that have been going on behind the scenes that we never even knew about. I mean, who would have thought to look at school bonds? I mean, what a scam. These things are all coming due, and it's going to blow up in the faces of a lot of these liberal cities. And they're not going to be, if you default on these, but they're not going to be issued any new bonds. It's literally, things are going to come to a screeching halt in places like New York City, places like Los Angeles, Chicago, you name it. So they've been looting the system through the bond market, and it'll be very, how can I say, it'll wake people up when people start to see just the amount of fraud, now. And also you got Nick Shirley. I was just last night, right before I went to bed, I was watching some of Nick Shirley's reporting out in California. I mean, it's just pure fraud. You have these office buildings, these really dilapidated office buildings in places like Van Nuys, and these people are driving Maybachs. They're driving the most, the latest and greatest BMW. There's nothing, Teslas, all these beautiful cars parked in this dilapidated office area, and he's knocking on the doors. There's no daycare centers in these places. There's no hospice care. It's all fraud. So it's almost like Nick's working from the bottom up and Trump's working from the top down, and we're going to meet somewhere here in the middle. And I mean, the fraud that's going to be exposed in California is just it's going to be jaw dropping. Yeah, it's going to be, and he's not going to stop. I mean, this Nick Shirley kid, and Trump's giving him throwing him the bone. He's behind it, but Nick's doing great work, and I would suggest everybody go check out his page on YouTube. He's unbelievable.
I mean, this is almost an even better way of waking people up about their finances, showing them where all their money's going rather than crashing the banks, which may ultimately happen. But as this is all coming out, and we were talking about this yesterday, the fact that Wamba and all that lot went down to Mar-a-Lago for the James O'Keefe thing. Nick Shirley was there. Nick Shirley was getting awards. James O'Keefe keeps showing up 2 days after wherever.
Exactly right.
Yes, it's all part of this. Trump can't go out and say, "Look at all this fraud here." Get Nick
exactly.
Shirley to do it, and get other people to do it, and other people to do it.
You have these multi-million-dollar newsrooms, and here's some kid wearing a hoodie. Yes. Outdoing the multi-billion-dollar fake news media companies and giving real, on the street. This is the type of reporting that we should have been getting our whole lives. And it takes some, 24-year-old kid to do it. Good for him. Good for him.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right, can I just read you a quick post that was on SG and On posted this on Telegram this morning. If you haven't been taking advantage of the absolute fire sale currently raging inside precious metals markets, you may wish to reconsider. Just yesterday, Deutsche Bank, one of the largest banks in Europe, said no to more than 80 requests for physical silver delivery. This comes after the bank's decision to close out every short position it had against silver in February 2026. Every single one. Around the same time, the Bank of America, one of the main pillars of the financial structure that underpins the US Federal Reserve, publicly proclaimed by their own estimates silver could reach $309 per 1 ounce by the end of 2026.
Oh yeah. You can see these banks, they're talking about short positions, they're talking about getting out of them. That's exactly what we just discussed a moment ago. They have to. If they don't, they're screwed. So it's a game of musical chairs. And it's really about holding the physical product. Sure, people that have historically held, paper positions, sure, you could get in your portfolio exposure to the price of gold and silver. But realistically, at the end of the day, that gold and silver does not exist anywhere. So that's why it's so important, as they say, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. So you really have to have the physical product either in your possession or sitting in a depository that you can transact on, that's yours, that's specifically in your own vault. Otherwise, you're getting conned. You're getting conned like everybody else.
Yeah. I had a question. Yesterday we had Mike Barra on, and we were talking, because he's very involved in, following what's going on with the revaluation of, the currencies and that sort of thing. And I think some of our, a percentage of the people that follow us are into that. A lot of us are very diversified in the different things that we're sort of hoping will come, whether it's precious metals, which I think is probably your surest bet, right? But there's other things, like we always talk about, things to invest in. So Mike said something interesting, because I just asked him, and of course we're not using dates or anything like that, but how will people sort of know, aside from us telling them because we heard, how will people sort of know when this actually has happened? Because we don't anticipate that Trump or anybody's going to get on and go, hey guys, the revaluation just happened. Go down to your local bank or find a redemption center. And
Right.
he said that he felt that it was very tied to when there's some kind of announcement made about us, where gold and silver, where gold is actually now what our monetary system is based on. What's your feeling about what some of these signs are going to be for people to know that maybe the system is starting to turn over?
I think it'll be in the debt market with what we just discussed with bonds. I think once you start seeing defaults there, like public school bonds, like we just talked about, I think once you start seeing defaults there, you're going to start seeing a wave of very similar things happening. Treasury bonds are garbage. No one wants them. The only entity buying them is the Federal Reserve. So I think you're going to start seeing these waves, and I think it's going to lead up to a day where I think it's going to look very similar to 2008, where one day, they're just going to get together and they're going to say, hey, if we don't bail out these banks and give them trillions of dollars again, well, everybody's going to lose their money overnight. And the only difference between now and 2008 is we have a person named Donald Trump in office who's going to sit there and say, no, why is everybody going to lose their money? What happened, guys? Let's take a look.
Yeah.
And I think what Trump will do is he'll probably do something for the depositors, meaning us, people that have deposits in the bank. And I think he's going to try to, as he always does, he's going to pit us against our banks. And he's going to pit us against our financial institutions. And he's going to have a real solution to say, here's how we can get out of this mess as unscathed as possible. You're all going to experience loss, but here's the guys who did it. Right. And that's where he can really start taking the banking system and the entire financial system in a new direction and really have the people behind him. Right. I think the whole key to this is Trump having the support of we the people. He's got the support of us, but he's got to get a lot of, people that maybe notoriously have not liked him at all. I think that they have to sit there and be like, yeah, these banks and these politicians, these guys screwed us. This wasn't Trump's fault. This is something that happened 30 years. This is a bond that was written 30 years ago. Trump wasn't in office 30 years ago. Right. So it's going to be made very obvious to people that who the true enemy is. And I think that's a place where he could start garnering support and start taking the economy and the system in a different direction. And what have we seen him do over the last, since he took office is you saw him behind the scenes really starting to getting ready to transition us from the Federal Reserve to the Treasury. Right. There's a lot of signs that would suggest that he's got something in place or almost in place where he can sort of, not crash the plane, but maybe land it in a field somewhere where there's minimal casualties. But there's going to be casualties. Anybody who thinks otherwise is a fool, because at the end of the day, people are so brainwashed. People are so locked into this whole nonsensical, politically correct bullshit. Okay, that at the end of the day, people are going to have to get hit in the pocketbook in order to have this moment seared in their minds, seared into their brains. And I think what the Patriots have done, on these different shows, whether it be me or some of the other companies out there, is, we've been really on top of gold and silver for the last, 5-6 years. A lot of these big shows have been advertising gold companies. It's like, if you're in the know and you're somebody who's been following the Q stuff, you understand that really gold and silver is the place to be. It's a bridge. It's not supposed to be some long-term investment. It's really just a way for you to get through this period of time where instead of losing your money, you're probably making money. You're probably benefiting from this. And there's nothing to celebrate about that, because there's going to be a lot more people that experience a lot of loss. But hey, if you're in the know and you've been somebody who's curious about the information, and you've been tuning in and you've had your ear to the ground, you've been open to thinking in a different way, you're almost getting tipped off. It's almost like an insider trading without the inside, right? Without the illegal part of it. It's almost like they've been tipping us off to be like, hey, get into the precious metals, get through this period of time, and you're going to have a glorious system on the other side of this. Just get through whatever's about to come, because it's going to be nasty. So I think that's what precious metals, at least that's what it represents to me. And that's kind of how I position it to clients, is like, it's, people, you mentioned the term diversification. It's like, what are you diversified in? Stocks, bonds, and mutual funds? It's all dog shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? There is no such thing as diversification. The best thing you could do is do effectively a currency conversion into physical precious metals, right? You're out of the banks. You're out of the Federal Reserve dollar, right? Because the dollar ain't going away. It's going to be the Federal Reserve that goes away. The dollar is, the dollar. The dollar took many forms throughout history. So you're out of the banks, you're out of the dollar, and you're out of these markets, right? Because the markets depend upon stability of the economy, which we've obviously lost, so they're tanking. So those three factors you've effectively solved, and you just sit tight. You wait to see what happens, and slowly but surely we'll rebuild the greatest. We're going to have the greatest economy in the world in the next couple of years. But just, you huddle up, you hodl, right? Hold on for dear life. The acronym for that, hodling.
Yeah.
And you just sit and wait. And you know what? As everything else goes down, what do you think gold and silver prices are doing? They're skyrocketing.
Yeah. Well, there's no one that watches, us three and all these other shows that he's not prepared and pretty much hasn't been prepared for years. I've had a 10 Days of Darkness food shop sitting upstairs for over 4 years now. Well, about 5-6 years, actually.
Can't wait.
It's all tin stuff. I wouldn't want to eat it to live on normally, but I can survive on it if the shit goes down.
Right.
Yeah, get prepared. Here we have tons of storables. I got a freezer full of all kinds of stuff. I've got generators to keep them working. It's pretty basic stuff. If we had to get through some serious period of time, and then, during that period of time where people are like, oh, am I going to barter with gold and silver? It's like, no, you're not going to be going out and spending money. Your best form of barter is going to be, a case of Jack Daniels and a carton of Marlboro Lights.
Right.
Literally true. It sounds funny, but it's true. That's the type of stuff people are going to want during a period like that. And you know what? People start meeting their neighbors, communities, local, right? It all happens at the most local of levels. People start helping each other. Hey, you need aspirin, or you need this medication or that. People can, and I think what that'll do is you have that for, a week, 10 days, right? 10 days of darkness. You have that for a week or 10 days. You start to realize that you don't need the freaking government in your life. We're all self-sufficient. We can trade amongst each other. We all have skills and products and things that we can sell to one another and buy from one another. It's life is so much simpler than what they make it to be.
Oh yeah. And helping each other. Well, talk about prepping. So right after 9/11, I started prepping. And I mean, I can't even tell you the abuse I took, and not like, crazy, but, having, like you said, like canned stuff, stuff that you could have for a while. And honestly, after we had Hurricane Sandy, I was like, you see, it's not just going to be like the apocalypse necessarily. It could be a storm. It could be, the electricity goes out in your neighborhood for 2 or 3 days because they're doing work. Like it could be anything. I think prepping, people think of us as nuts, but anything can be. You could get sick. You don't have a bad flu, and you say, well, all right, I got rice in the house and I got this, I can't go shopping. So, I mean, that's just smart. And I think our ancestors knew that, right? Because they would harvest, and then they had their canned stuff, right? I mean, the Italians with the tomatoes and, the fruits. And so that's what they got us off of, like you said, and getting us into this dependency on the system, right? I mean, I don't know how long ago your ancestors came to the States, Matt, but I'm like, grandparents. And what was the first thing they did when they got here? The first thing they did was they set up a farm wherever they are. And my grandparents lived in Manhattan, in East Harlem. So in the yard, they had chickens, they had, vegetables, and that has been kind of pulled out of everyone to have a nice little garden and a nice way to be self-sufficient. And I think we're coming full circle to that more, to say, you could share. You could give your neighbor some tomatoes because they're growing string beans, whatever.
I'll tell you this. You mentioned Manhattan. I was just thinking of Manhattan, during 10 Days of Darkness. Guns are highly illegal in Manhattan. You could not, Plaxico Burress, remember he shot himself in the nightclub after the Giants won the Super Bowl and he did 2 years in prison under Bloomberg?
I don't remember.
They made an example out of him. But let me tell you something. If I lived in Manhattan right now, okay, I'd have a gun. I would have a gun. I'd have multiple guns and lots of ammo. Because when that time comes, Manhattan's going to be a very dangerous place. These Democrat inner cities and places like that in surrounding areas, it's going to be extremely dangerous in those places. You're going to have some very desperate people. And, that's what the Democrats have bred. That's what they've created.
Yep.
Well, I wouldn't want to be in one of those places, but I do think white hats actually use the COVID lockdown as a way to teach people for what is coming, you know, how to prepare, how to look after yourselves when you're locked in your homes and stuff. Potentially.
And I present to you Scott Stone. You want to sit on this side with Daphne sitting?
Yeah.
I put the shade down. Here, I'm going to change camera. Hello, Daphne.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, Scott.
Good morning.
Legend,
How are you?
The legend himself.
Good. How are you? All refreshed for the day. We heard you were taking a nice shower. You got that hot temperature out there.
Yeah, it's definitely necessary. That's for sure. But no, I'm awake now. So
We were just talking about the 10 days of darkness and what that could look like.
right.
Any thoughts there?
Well, from which perspective? Because I think the context for me is mostly spiritual. I don't know that we're going to have an actual blackout of any kind.
Going to close the shade a little.
Yeah, but I suppose if we did, and it would have something to do with a electromagnetic pulse or something along those lines. But I don't know why 10 days, so specifically 10 days was cited. That to me sounds more like a process where everybody's kind of in the dark about something and then we evolve out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't actually say 10 days of darkness in the Q drops, did it? 10 days period, darkness period, dawn, Kess. We've heard of 3 days of darkness biblically. So just, I know people are pretty much prepared for everything really, but we were just talking about, the COVID lockdowns, teaching people potentially used by the white hats for this time. We were just talking about prepping really and all the food we've got. I mean, I've got a life straw as well. I can drink out of my toilet if I need to for 10 days.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Stu.
Yeah, I know. I've got a canal nearby as well in case all the water goes down. But it also told us in the Q drops as well, didn't it? We've got a black eye. So I don't think the power's going to go down. We might have a communication shutdown of some sort, but then potentially the EBFs will fire and that will be keeping everyone informed anyway.
Well, there's just so many things that are so monumental right now. I just heard about some new, I haven't finished watching, but some new technological breakthrough that's off everyone's radar that Elon Musk is about to release. That should be life-changing. Of course, we have this war, saving Israel for last. I think we're in the thick of it. A lot of people speculate that this will go on for years. I'm not one of those people. I think we're coming up on the end.
Yeah, same. I think the next few months are going to be very spicy indeed. Coming up to this, obviously, Trump said this July the 4th date and the celebration. So you would think, Trump's not really been wrong about much, has he? And what he has been wrong about is normally give it 48 to 72 hours and you think, oh, actually, he was right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there have been some major moves that have gone largely undiscussed. I know the ladies over at Promethean Action are discussing it, but the deep state elements of, Great Britain, specifically the city of London, all of that is just collapsing beautifully. A lot of these power structures seem to be collapsing necessarily. And, we watched the WEF fall apart. They're trying to regain some sort of structure, but the optics for Klaus were so bad. I don't think they'll ever recover. And I don't know. Everything just seems lined up for great times ahead. Might get a little bumpy on the way.
It also looks like
Sorry, go on.
It also looks like we're taking over Cuba. We took Venezuela, right? We have Iran. It looks like we're probably working with Iran, if I had to guess.
That's my guess.
I think we're working with Iran to take down Israel. I think it's quite the opposite.
100% agree with you.
It'd be interesting to see what's going on in Mexico, to see, if we've taken Mexico yet, because I think Mexico is probably going to get taken, and handed back to the people. It's not like, Trump's going to say we're keeping Mexico, but I think we're going to oversee the restructuring of their government and putting, their own people in there. And as Juan says, instead of being our brother's keeper, we're going to be our brother's brother. So by the time we do these real mass deportations, the real ones that are coming, we're sending them back to a place that they can build on their own and reap the rewards of it and live a great life like they do in the United States. You know what? Everybody wins. Everybody wins.
Exactly. sorry, just talking about the WEF and people like that, Klaus Schwab, is these are people always operated in secrecy and Bilderbergers, and you just see them driving in and that. Everything about these people has been on the TV for us over the last 6 years, and then they walk Klaus Schwab out dressed as Darth Vader. You know, it tells you the Patriots are in control, doesn't it? And I just want to say that Trump has sent all the ICE into airports now. You've got all these liberals go stepping about, you know, calling them Nazis and stuff. But all the queues have gone down. You know, they're handing out people water. It's a great move.
Well, ICE can also help with elections. You know, they could be at election, polling places. ICE, we're going to need them because this has to be a secure election. We need to show people what a real vote looks like. And what a real vote looks like is it looks like an entirely red United States. Yeah. And I think what Trump's also doing at the same time, what it seemed to me, and I kind of put this, I was listening to somebody the other day, is that, you know, he's trying to pass the Save America Act. And if you have the people that really won in 2022 and 2024, their positions, like Carrie Lake, right, or some of these other people that really won their positions, we would have easily the support to pass the SAVE Act. So I think what you're going to see next, most likely, is that we're going to start exposing the voter fraud. It's already happening. We're going to start exposing that fraud and start putting the real winner of these races into their seat. And now that's going to start getting the SAVE Act. That's going to start moving toward getting the SAVE Act passed through weeding out the corruption, putting the proper candidate who won in, and passing it through the real vote, the true vote, the real will of the American people.
Yeah. What I find interesting is that, okay, if we go back to the Biden era and remember the 75,000 new IRS agents that were being hired and all of that. So that would say to me that where are those people? What were those people? If that's true, what were those people really hired for? Like, what are they putting federal people in place? And then I think after just a little while ago, didn't they
Trump
moved
flipped them over and turned them all into ICE?
Yes. And then I don't know how it is in Arizona with you guys, but I haven't seen them recently. Maybe a month ago was the last time I saw it. They were putting ads on it. I don't have regular TV. I only have like streaming services and YouTube, whatever.
Same here.
Right. So there were ads on with Kristi Noem at the time, right? Department of Homeland Security. And they were inviting people to sign up as ICE agents. And I found it interesting because I don't know if this was national or it was in certain areas. But interestingly enough, it's New York. Here I am. It's liberal and it's a very corrupt place. So I think there's so much more, like to your point, when you think of ICE and what they're going to be charged with doing. And I think it has to do with elections. And I think it has to do with a lot more than just deporting people.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, we have this scare event looming, right? Sometimes a scare event is necessary. And I think that'll be a unity piece more than anything. I think it'll overshadow a lot of this stuff and unify people. And with regard to the immigration, I mean, the biggest problem associated with it, and there are many, certainly the voting and the, cultural issues, all kinds of different things, but it's an economic issue. And 75% of the cost of all goods or services is directly related to the cost of the energy it takes to produce or provide them. So if we had, we hear about these, 6,000 plus patents that have been shelved. There's a lot of indications that, we've had 0 point energy in the past, specifically around the Kennedy era. So I think we're going to see something along those lines that's really going to bring prosperity to the rest of the world as well. So we don't have, economic refugees. We don't have the necessity for those things. The tide that, rises all ships or whatnot. I think that's coming sooner than later as a part of this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of these things converge kind of at the same time, because we're like, remember, you go back 5 years ago and we're all kind of like carrying on, like, when is this happening? Because we were following it for so long. So now we're waiting, but you just start like every day, there's just something else that you're like, oh, because now it's actually in the public, which tells me it was probably all done, but they just now, they roll it out at a certain timing. And I know, Scott, I think it was on your show, right? With Joe, that you had somebody, actually an old friend of his, who was part of sort of the behind the scenes, saying that everything was done by 2015, right? So what is that saying? It's just the movie, and it's the timing, and it's this reverse boiling the frog of getting people to accept things. I mean, because you still have knuckleheads that are carrying on about the importance of vaccines, so you can't just kind of bam say we're not going to give them out anymore. So I think that goes across the board with everything. And then, it always stuck in my mind, like how all these invaders, right? This foreign invasion that took place with all these people getting cell phones and being put up in hotels. And yes, there was the psyop of, oh, why are they getting that? And our people are suffering. But who were these people really? And what's their job and what's their role? Because you can't tell me during the Biden years, our guys were not in control. So what are they doing? What does this mean? And maybe it didn't even happen when they said it happened. You know what I mean? Like, we just don't know because we're being psyoped all the time.
Well, and all those psyops have, made such an impression, across cultures and everything else. It's a way of thinking that will not serve the future. So if everyone doesn't have some kind of understanding or awakening taking place, we'll be right back where we are now in 20 years or so. It's really important that this gets baked into the lexicon. That people really understand that, the old phrase is freedom isn't free, and that's very true, but it really, if we have a stronger appreciation for it, we're all more likely to put personal effort into it, and be vigilant over it. And I think that's essential for humanity moving forward. And I think we're going to be greeted with all these new elements, whether it's, alien disclosure, we have all these fireballs landing on the planet. This is what yesterday and the day before.
The green fireball.
Right. We've got, we had the orbs. The sightings are so common now that they're not even really impressed by them. It's just like, oh yeah.
And the technologies.
Yeah.
And the technology's coming up.
For sure.
The cures.
The White House has just registered 2 domain names, hasn't it? Alien.org and aliens.org. So it's obviously preparing us for some sort of disclosure going down that road as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be Project Bluebeam, but I think that opportunity kind of came and went already. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because we were watching a video yesterday saying that even what just happened at JFK at LaGuardia with that plane hitting into the truck, speculating that did that really happen? So I think there's so many things. But what's interesting is I know someone who worked in New York. I guess it was part of maybe Legal Aid or one of those organizations that was all, the whole department and the whole program was about immigration and helping people, and that got shut down like a year ago, maybe even a little more. So I think if you delve into some of this stuff, like a lot of this cleanup or this change is already happening. And Scott, I know you take things very much from like the spiritual angle a lot, as do I think all of us. But I think I can't imagine that where we're going is not going to have some kind of humanitarian upgrade, because in order for the average, like we're sort of living in 5D, 3D, right? But other people are still so immersed and unawakened and don't know. So I do think there has to be something, not just a scare event to like consciously break people out of their slumber, but something that is physically upgrading the frequency of us, because otherwise as a mass group, we're not going to be able to maintain what you just said, which is to keep us out of that place where we're controlled as slaves. Do you agree with that?
I do. And I mean, the example of the energy is probably a good one, not just as a unity piece, but if 75%, of the cost of all goods or services is related to the cost of the energy, and suddenly energy goes to 1% or 0 point, well, what does that do for humanity? It frees us up significantly, and that with the advent of robots, I mean, Elon's going to be selling robots for around $30,000, I think. The
do your
workplace,
laundry.
yeah, the workplace will change. We'll be freed up to pursue, more efforts from the heart. Certainly humanitarian angles and so on. I think that's going to be more abundantly available. A big part of why things are the way they are is because most of our effort is focused on, a 40-hour, 60-hour work week and surviving. Yeah. Keeping up with the Joneses, whatever. I think all of that is going to be disrupted significantly in a really good way.
Yeah. When you talk about humanitarian, but you just even scale it back. What if people just didn't have to work as hard? I mean, I'm here in New York in Nassau County. Okay. My electric bill this month was $280. Okay. It wasn't a high heat month. And then I have to pay for my gas, right? Which is another almost like $200 to $300. Like, that's a lot of money for a working person. So even if you don't take it to the humanitarian level, imagine a guy, a woman not having to work as many hours and they could just be with their children. They could be cooking. They could be gardening. They could just you don't have to look at this grand scale. They can all of a sudden maybe help their elderly, neighbor and say, hey, I'm going to the store. Do you need who could think about those things when you're just slaving all the time, and then we can get back to parents raising their children and imparting them with values. So I think the humanitarian aspect is on a grand scale is more just about letting people live every day, just waking up and not being forced to work these ridiculous hours and jobs that they hate.
That's such a good point. Really is. And, what was it? 6 different countries announced the cure for cancer upon the, the revelations of the Epstein files. There's going to be a lot more of that kind of thing. We've had the Rockefeller system in place, creating sick people for profit for so long. When that gets toppled and we take an honest approach to human health, I think the leaps are going to be spectacular.
I mean, just imagine what AI can do. You put your blood into, a machine and the AI can tell you everything, what's going on, what's wrong. I mean, it's unbelievable. And that's not a human that's got to do it. Some corruptible human that, is willing to give you a vaccine because the government's going to pay him a boatload of money to do it. So if you can get that element out of healthcare, sort of unfortunately human nature out of healthcare, the world's going to be a better place.
Yeah,
definitely.
100%.
Precise surgeries, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, talking about being upgraded, I was talking to you about this before, Scott. 3i Atlas, is that still about? I mean, I know you're quite interested in that, aren't you?
I am. As far as I know, it's still within the sphere of influence. For sure. I don't know the exact details right now, but that's not all that's out there. There's an awful lot that's out there that we're certainly not being told about. And some people, I think have a better sense of that than others. But it still remains pretty esoteric. I think we're going to wake up to an awful lot of revelation in that regard.
There's a couple of weeks there, all he'd talk about every day is 3i Atlas. I'm like, I don't want to hear about this anymore, Scott.
I'm sorry for bringing it up, Matt.
Well, it was there for so long, and now you don't hear a word about it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think ultimately they're here to observe, but their presence is definitely having an impact, and I think it's a very positive one. Yeah.
I think it's just so exciting. I mean, listen, hopefully, if you just go by your gut, I'm just going strictly by my gut. I think 5 years from now, we're going to be living in a completely different, we're hoping things will happen and they're going to happen. But I think 5 years from now, so kids, let's say that are in college right now, college age, I think they're doom and gloom that we see, right? Like when we were younger, we could just move out, we could get an apartment, we get a few roommates. Like we were able to do that, back in the 80s, 90s, right? These kids can't. It's impossible. They just can't do it. And the rents are exorbitant and it's just nuts. But I think we're going to see a real change in the next 5 years. I think their lives are going to be incredible. This college age kind of kids. And I think for us, the elder statespeople, I think that we're going to see things like our lives are going to be extended more. I think if we could get through the next couple of years, I think we're going to be able to live longer and more robustly and, just be at peace. I mean, what do you guys think? Like the magic numbers? I don't think it's like decades away. Yeah, changing everything decades, but I think we're going to have some really good years ahead.
3.5 months.
Absolutely.
Well, I know Juan said 2 years ago, he says, if you can live another 10 to 15 years, you're probably going to live to 120, 130.
Wow.
So that should be interesting.
And I think that's a gross understatement, really.
So do I.
Those figures based on the progression of technology alone, of course, it's been wildly manipulated. When I was in high school, the projection for my generation was 140 years. I think last year marked the first year, maybe it was last year, the year before, it marked the first year that we were actually in decline on lifespan. But again, that's that whole Rockefeller system, with the chemtrailing, all of the different ways that we're poisoned and so on. If you alleviate those inputs, I think that alone will have a massive impact. Cancer, we're learning more about cancer's origin being a parasitic nature. You can't really fight the enemy if you don't know what it is, kind of a thing. So, leaps and bounds. It's going to be incredible.
What about that guy? There was some story about a guy somewhere in Russia. I want to say Siberia, but I don't know if it was Siberia. And he's like 168 years old. And a lot of those people live that long, right? They're not exposed to everything we are. But he wasn't like sitting in a chair, right? Like you see like a 90 or a 95-year-old, they're not really doing. And this guy was like,
chopping wood.
Chopping wood, right? And so that's what we're meant. We're meant to be very, listen, if you consider most people, right? You're in your 20s, you're kind of partying, you're having fun, you don't know much, you're still kind of stupid, 30s, and you really don't get wisdom until you hit around like mid to late 40s, 50, right? You've made mistakes, you've gotten screwed, you've had some wins. So that's sort of like an adolescence, isn't it? It's like we're still in an adolescence until we're about 50 years old.
Right.
We start to lose the ego. So wouldn't it make sense then to be able to live another couple of 100 years where you could really do some great things and make an impact on the world?
Totally.
Absolutely. And I think that's the original design. I mean, look at the Bible. How, folks were living 1,000 years.
Right. And we thought it was like, oh, they calculated time differently. They did that. No, I think that was the truth.
I was just going to say, if he's 168 years of age, he's probably one of them geezers who found out that Elon found out through Doge was voting for the Democrats. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm just starting to get to the point where I realize how little I know. That's way in the beginning. I'm going to need another 900 years just to sort that out.
I mean, people are taking so much care of their health now and stuff. They're not drinking so much tap water, distilling it, eating better food and stuff. We're all sort of in the process of that anyway. It's almost like a transition period, isn't it, for what's to come?
100%. I was with Normie yesterday, and apparently, one of our relatives, like 35 years old, like rushed to the hospital a couple of days ago because he was having chest pains. Anyway, it had nothing to do with his heart. It was something else. But they were all like, well, if it's not his heart, it's got to be like malignant. And it just like, usually I don't roll off the tongue, but I was like, listen, I don't even slightly fear cancer anymore. I said, because there are ways. I said, if God forbid that's what they find, I said, we give him ivermectin, fenbendazole. Now, this is a pharmacist I'm talking to. I said, he's fine. And she was like, okay, like she's so Rockefeller entrenched, but now it just hit her close to home, and there was at least an openness. So to our point, you can't really wake people up, but you just keep freaking, whenever you can, just start like getting that out there for people. Now, is she going to tell someone else? Is she going to mention that in conversation? Maybe. That would be great.
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. So you guys, you got a busy day today. Like I asked Scott, you weren't here before. I was asking Matt, what is the day in the life of a gold and silver dealer? What do you do? And he was telling us about like a little bit about your day. So I just want to keep reiterating to people, if you haven't made the switch and you haven't done it, I think you know, it's never too late, just because like some of us got in at, 15, 20, 25 for silver, right? Big deal. We're still going to see a huge jump, right? Even
Exactly.
here at 85, 90, 100.
Yeah, hopefully prices stay where they are right now. I'd like to see everybody, be able to take advantage of these, dips in prices. But like we said, they're just pulling the shorts out. Once they pull out these shorts, this, sky's the limit. I think 300 is I think we'll see 200-300 by the summer.
Really?
Yeah. I do. I really do. But everybody has to understand, it's not just the gold and silver price. It's also getting out of whatever other assets that are on a crash course or a collision course, just based on a lot of the, things like the school bonds that we talked about earlier. That's just going to be one element of a tidal wave of debt defaults and a debt crisis. They've been kicking the can down the road and they've run out of road. What else is there to say? Now we're going to have to face it.
Yeah.
Well, a fiat currency typically has a 200-year-ish lifespan.
Yeah.
And we've gone past that with this fiat. But when you think about the function of, this faith-based, heavily manipulated currency, it doesn't really allow for market forces to dictate much of anything. It's rife with all sorts of susceptibility to manipulation. Sound money really is the key, and it would appear that that's kind of the direction we're going in with the ISO coins, the different digital instruments, but backed by assets, real assets.
Yeah.
Those assets are gold and silver, right? Primarily.
So what is just like, I have like one more question, because I know there's probably a lot of people, whether it's our show or the other shows that you guys go on, that are afraid. What do you find the biggest fear that people have in kind of taking that leap to rolling over an IRA, or saying I have this amount of money in the bank, maybe I'll invest some in silver or gold? What do you find is the fear? Like, what stops people?
I think the biggest, it's several factors. It's a great question. I think one is fear of the unknown. Everybody's so comfortable and used to, having their IRAs with their financial advisor. And, they're worried about, hey, if I have to make this change and move my money into gold and silver, well, my financial advisor has no ability to offer me physical gold and physical silver. So now I got to tell them, hey, I'm going somewhere else. And yet that advisor, in all fairness to them, they've done a great job for them over the years. They've done a great job for them, maybe for decades. Some people, they might even be personal friends with their advisors. They go on vacations together. So it's hard to move away from that with the idea that, and then they sit there and they say, well, is gold and silver the place to be? And they just don't understand then it comes in, they don't understand the asset. They don't understand what they're really doing at the core of it, which, as I said before, getting out of the banks, out of the Federal Reserve System, and out of the markets before they all tank, right? They haven't internalized this maybe the way I have or Scott has, because we're in the business. We live and breathe this stuff. So to us, it's a no-brainer, but to the average person out there, I think it's when people are faced with a major decision to make a major change, what it generally leads to is doing nothing, right? It's like doing nothing. And unfortunately, that's what keeps people in the space. Another thing is, let's say some guy's got a couple $1 million he wants to convert. He might, or she might be sitting there saying, where the hell am I going to store this? Right. So I just tell people, it's like, I can give you all kinds of solutions on storage and, storing it at home, reputable depositories that you can store it at. right? We have solutions for all this. So whenever I talk to these people and I clarify this stuff, it almost like that light goes on top of their head, and I think that makes them feel more comfortable. So I always encourage people, like, just give us a call. You know, I can really make sense of this for people in just a very common sense, basic way. You know, I'm not some huge financial guy or analyst. I just feel like I see what's going on in the world, and I think that gold and silver is just a solution for one aspect of this movement. It's just your finances. It's a solution for that, right? There's other things out there. There's other problems that need to be solved. But I'm in the gold and silver world, so I think I can solve the IRA solution for you, the cash solution for you. You know, and obviously you have to have money in this system, right? You need a new roof. You can't pay in gold and silver yet, but I think it's really, people should really consider and just give us a call. You know, I'm no guy to strong arm anybody. I'd love to hear from the audience. You know, there's plenty of people that call in, don't do anything. And you know what I hear from them 6 months, a year later? Matt, I should have done it back then. Let's do it now. It's like, great, let's go. You know, so we're real easy to work with and easy to deal with.
But if you look at the way the world is working right now, I'd say everything is so disruptive, intentionally and otherwise. I feel like if you're invested in the stock market and other, fiat measures and whatnot,
Casino.
Yeah, you're playing musical chairs, and at some point the music's going to stop, and Wall Street seems to always get the chairs.
It always happens at a time of their choosing.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see it coming. You know, you asked me earlier, when are people going to see it? You're not going to see it coming. That's the reality. You're going to see it when the fake news wants you to see it. When CNN sends out that 4 a.m. Talking points, right? And they're going to tell you, okay, that's the crashes today. And you're not going to hear it till about 8 a.m. Right on the dot, 8:01. Sorry, the financial system crashed. We need money.
Yeah. Brilliant. I was just going to ask you, because there's a lot going on in Iran at the moment and all this oil sitting there in the Strait of Hormuz. How do you think all this oil situation might affect the precious metals market?
I mean, it should be good, but I don't think they're really correlated, because I think the market manipulation in precious metals, as well as oil prices. I mean, the oil OPEC is a cartel, as Trump would say. And the gas stations themselves, they're not going to lower prices. Even when gas prices did come down, the gas stations all colluded with each other just to keep them all up. So there's really no correlation. I think it's really, oil prices are going to continue to remain high, and then they're not going to be. One day it's just going to all come down. And I think what Trump's doing, sorry, I'm going to fly me. What Trump's doing is he's forcing the need and for people to see that we got to drill in this country. We got to have our own energy supply. And that's where this is headed. And once we do that, man, this country's going to have so much money. We're going to pave the streets in gold.
Well, I'll take it even a step further. When we watched, the more recent back and forth between Saudi Arabia and OPEC countries in general and Trump, there was that, we know about the capitulation, but there was this promise of trillions of dollars of investment in the United States. I think the driving force behind that is the promise of this 0 point energy, or this new technology, because oil will always be useful, for so many different goods or services and whatnot, but I don't think we'll have the dependency that we once had on it by a long shot. And for these countries to survive, they're going to need to diversify significantly. And I think that's what we're looking at. I think that's why we have these new allies in this, is a shared technology that will do just that.
That's a brilliant point, actually, because if you've got all these Middle Eastern countries that make all their money from oil, and then all of a sudden no one needs an oil anymore, they're going to have to make deals, aren't they, to come into this new system and these new technologies and stuff and be on board.
Yeah. We have a question. Matt, is the price valued on, I guess, the price of gold or silver, valued on ounces or grams?
Ounces.
Ounces. Okay.
Troy ounce is 31.15 grams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unlike a fluid ounce, which is, I think, 28.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, amazing. Well, I'm just going to say, actually, that there's so much going on that the more I hear Trump say he's central casting, they're all central casting, it is just it's been done for a long time, hasn't it? And we are just watching this public narrative rollout of everything that's to wake these people up before the hammer goes down. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Brilliant.
This was
All
great, guys. I'm so glad you joined us, Scott. I was saying this too last I was like, let's like mix it up. Let's have Scott. He's in the trenches there with Matt. Let's get his input on it.
Good idea. That was good. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Just kind of,
All right, guys. Well,
we'll be seeing you in April.
yes.
I'm
Can't
so
wait.
excited for it. It's going to be a great event.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. I can't wait, and I can't wait to meet you guys in person. We're gonna have a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Looking
Well,
forward to it.
we'll talk soon. Have a great
Very
day.
good.
God
You
bless.
too. God
Have a
bless.
good day, guys. Enjoy the nice hot
Thanks,
weather
Phil.
there. It's sunny
Yeah,
again
you
now.
too.
I'll give it 17 minutes. It'll be snowing again. So,
All right.
yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone in the chat. We love you all. Where we go, when we go all. And we'll see you soon. Take
Bye-bye.
care, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Make sure you're watching Stu's News and Patriots Across the Pond for some of your awakening information. Amazing guests every week from Monday to Saturday. Visit patriotsacrossthepond.com and follow Stewie and Elisa today on Rumble for the live shows. And remember, where we go one, we go all.
In a world flooded with noise, clarity has become rare. People are questioning what they're told and searching for something real. Mr. Heal's modern wellness meets old school remedies. CBD tinctures, methylene blue, gummies and edibles, THC-free wellness, and functional remedies crafted with old school care and modern precision. Biozox, a trusted source for ivermectin and fenbendazole. Biozox, believe your health decisions should be yours, not dictated by politicians or big pharma. Crafted with purpose and precision, Freedom Forged coffee, cacao and mushroom tinctures, small batch roasted coffee, rich cacao and functional mushrooms crafted with purpose. Verity Metals, redefining what precious metals investing should be. Why choose Verity Metals? We're not just another gold dealer. We're a trusted retirement partner. Our clients choose us because we lead with education, integrity, and transparency. Medical bills are the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States, accounting for 66.5% of bankruptcies. We can all agree the healthcare system is broken. There is an alternative, impact health sharing, which Yahoo News is calling the disruptor in the $4.6 trillion healthcare system. For more information, visit patriotsacrossthepond.com.